experience. Let's move on to this session now. The objective of the today's class is we would like to discuss about the selenium. Okay, in the today's class we would like to discuss about the selenium. So where in which I would like to explain what is the selenium, why we are going for selenium, what are all the various advantages, of course it's disadvantages too, and the components available in selenium, and what are all the features also for individual components, and then what exactly the course content we are going to discuss in our regular class and even regular class timings, and followed by a general questions as well. Okay, so these are all the basic stuff which I would like to address in today's class. So let's start with what is a selenium. Okay, we need to start about what is a selenium. So generally nowadays the majority of the people are using this terminology, which is a selenium. So what exactly that one is? The best example for this one is, in order to automate any kind of an application, we do have n number of open source and commercial tools available in a market. Okay, we do have a n number of open source tools and as well as a commercial tools among available in a market. So the various tools like selenium, qtp, sahi pro, provar, testlink, or else a silk text, etc. These are too many tools available in a market. So max to max of the people are using this selenium tool. The reason is, so what exactly a selenium means? Selenium is a tool. So selenium is an automation tool which is used to automate a web-based applications. In order to automate any kind of a web-based applications, we are going for this selenium tool. Okay, selenium is a tool which is used to automate any kind of a web-based applications itself. That's fine. So using selenium we can automate any kind of a web-based applications. That's fine. So what additionally we can do, and why max to max people are going for this tool itself? The reason is, the simple reason is, selenium is an open source tool. It means anyone can simply download this software. Okay, anyone can simply download this software and they can install this software in their machines, and they can automate their applications. They can automate their applications, for which they no need to pay even a single rupee. They can simply download it and they can simply automate their applications using this selenium tool. That's fine. So what are all the various advantages with this particular tool? The first advantage is an open source tool, and selenium supports a record and a playback feature. So what does it mean, the record and a playback feature? The best example is our mobile phones itself. In our mobile phones, we used to have either an audio or a video recorder. So whenever we clicked on a record button, automatically it will capture either the audio or else a video, and whenever we want, we can play back that audio or a video from mobile gallery, right? So from mobile gallery, so this record and a playback feature will works on a mobile. The same way here, the record and a playback feature for selenium supports on a browser. Okay, the record and a playback feature for selenium supports on a browser. It means whatever the actions we are performing on the Firefox browser, for those actions our IDE will record the scripts and it will play back the actions on the same browser. Okay, this is how our Selenium IDE will support record and a playback feature. It works on a browser. Whatever the actions we are performing on the browser, for those it will capture the scripts and it will play back the script on a same browser itself. That's fine. And the second advantage is it supports multiple programming languages. What does it mean? If I know Java, I can write my Selenium codes. If I know Ruby, I can write my Selenium code. If I know Python, even I can write my Selenium code. Whatever the programming language might be, if at all we are familiarized with any one of the programming languages, we can write down our Selenium programs. Okay, we can write down our Selenium programs if at all we are familiarized with any one of the programming languages, and it will run the script across multiple browsers like IE, Firefox, Safari, Chrome, etc. We can choose any one of the browsers and we can run our test scripts. And the next advantage is it supports cross browser, cross OS, and a load testing also. Using Selenium, we can perform all these things, as it is an open source tool and it supports these many advantages. Majority of the people are going for this Selenium tool itself. Okay guys, am I clear for everybody, or do you have any questions? You can use the chat window. Okay, you can use the chat window. Is this point clear for everybody, or do you have any questions for me? Is this clear for you guys? You can add your inputs just by saying yes or no in a chat window. Fine. It's fine. Done. Done up to here. So once we are done up to here, the other point what exactly we need to discuss is, so far we have seen about the various advantages. Now I would like to cover about the disadvantages with this too. Okay, we have seen about the various advantages. Let's see the disadvantages with this too. Okay, the various disadvantages with this too are, it supports only web-based applications. Okay, it doesn't support any kind of window-based scenarios. It's one limitation. And another limitation is using Selenium. As we told you that it's an open source tool, we can treat it as a limitation too. Why we can count open source tool as a limitation? The reason is basically, assume that I'm using a commercial tool, and whenever I struck at a particular point means, while automating an application, whenever I struck at a particular point means, I will get a proper support from the team to solve my issues. Whenever we are going for an open source tool, we don't get any proper support for that. Okay, that's one limitation. And another limitation is, whenever we are working on any kind of an applications using Selenium, it's not a possible for us. Okay, using Selenium, it's not a possible for us to handle the window based scenarios. What does it mean? See here, I do have a scenario where in which I need to upload my file from my local machine. When I selected this, it's gonna display the information from my local machine. See here, it's gonna display the information from my local machine, where in which it's not a possible for me to handle these windows by default with Selenium. This is another limitation. Okay, any kind of a window based scenarios, whenever we are performing some kind of an actions on an application, it will pop up some windows. It's not a possible for us to handle those windows using Selenium. Okay, so these two are major limitations with this tool. So let me give you a small example here guys. Assume that I do have just a 2 GB of a free space in my machine. Okay, I do have just a 2 GB of a free space in my machine, and if I would like to store 10 GB of a movies into my machine means, it's not at all possible for us, right? It's not at all possible for us to store that much of information. Okay, it's not at all possible for us to store that much of information. then what we are doing, we are connecting an external hard disk. Okay, we are connecting an external hard disk, which is a memory location wherein which we are storing the information. Okay, wherein which we are storing the information, and in future whenever you would like to access that, we will simply connect the hard disk and we will access the information. Okay, we will simply connect the external hard disk and we will access the information from that external hard disk. Okay, so it means with this we are overcoming the memory limitations, right? The same way here, by default using selenium we can't handle any window based scenarios, but we are adding some third party tools to our selenium like AutoIT or CQ. Okay, we are just adding some kind of a third party tools to handle window based scenarios. With these tools we can handle any kind of a window based scenarios using selenium. And that too, coming to the open source limitation, we do have n number of Google groups from where we can get solutions for all our issues. Okay, so even though we are not getting any support from the selenium team, but we do have a n number of expert Google groups wherein which we can get the solutions for all our issues. So it means even though we are having certain limitations, we are just overcoming those limitations using this particular tool. Okay, we are just overcoming those limitations using this particular tool. So these are the various advantages and disadvantages with this tool. Am I clear for everyone, or do you people have any specific questions for me till now? If at all you people are having any questions, just address me in a chat window, guys, so that I will unmute you and you can ask me questions directly. If not, just add your input so that I will proceed with the further concepts. Fine. Cool. Can you tell me the differences between a QDP and Selenium? Of course. So QDP and Selenium. So the basic differences, I will explain you about the basic differences between a QDP and Selenium. Okay, the first and a major difference between these two is QDP is a commercial software. Okay, so QDP is a commercial tool where in which, as it is a commercial software, if at all an organization needs to work on a QDP tool, means that organization needs to purchase a license from QDP and then they need to work on this particular tool. And then, as you know that we discussed right now, Selenium is an open source tool. It means we no need to purchase any license. So here, organization need to spend some amount to work on this particular automation tool, whereas organization no need to spend even a single rupee to work on this particular tool. Another basic differences between these two is QDP. Okay, using this QDP, if at all we are familiarized with the VB scripting, then only we can write down our code. Whereas if at all we are going for this Selenium tool, if I am familiarized with any one of the programming languages, I can write down my Selenium code. Okay, I can write down my Selenium code. And not only that, what are all the various features supported by QDP tool? All the features are supported by our Selenium tool also, as it is an open source tool and it supports these many advantages. And what are all the features supported by our commercial tool? Almost all the features are supporting by our tool. That's the reason we are going for this Selenium tool, guys. Okay,
I have a question.
yes, please go ahead.
To buy a third-party tool, so that is also a free open source, or we need to spend some amount to buy
The
the
third
third-party
party
tool?
tool. See here, we
Yeah.
are going for Selenium. It's an open source tool. Whenever you would like to integrate or else add some kind of a third party tools, means for sure we will go for the open source tools itself. So these two are
Okay.
open source tools itself.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Fine. So done, guys. So done up to here. And then I'm just moving on to the next component, which is components available in Selenium. Components in Selenium, we can also call it as a flavors. Flavors are components in Selenium. What does it mean? Selenium is having a 4 different components. What are all those things? The first one is Selenium IDE. The second one is Selenium RC. We can treat it as a version 1.0. The third one is a WebDriver, which is the latest component of Selenium. We can treat it as a WebDriver version 2.0. And the last one is a Selenium Grid. So these are the 4 different components available in Selenium. Each and every component has its own significance. IDE is having certain significances, RC is having certain significance, WebDriver is having some significance, and a grid is also having certain significance. Moving on to the first component, Selenium IDE, it supports record and a playback feature only on Firefox browser. See here, the point is Selenium IDE supports a record and a playback feature. That's fine. But it is working specifically on a Firefox browser. It doesn't support record and a playback feature for any other browsers, as IDE is an add-on or plugin to our Firefox browser alone. Okay, as IDE is a plugin to our Firefox browser alone. It means whatever the actions we are performing on a Firefox browser, for those actions only my IDE will record the scripts, and whenever we want, our Selenium IDE will perform the playback action on the same Firefox browser itself. Okay, the record and a playback feature is supported only on a Firefox browser. That's the first point. So this one we can treat it as a major limitation. The reason is, as we told that in the advantages of Selenium, it supports a multiple browsers, whereas using IDE, it is supporting for only one browser, which we can treat it as a limitation of IDE alone. Okay, limitation of IDE alone, which is okay, which is the first one is a Firefox browser restriction. Okay, Firefox browser restriction. That's fine. So another limitation is, as it is an add-on or plugin to our browser, we can't implement any kind of conditional statements and looping statements as well. Okay, we can't implement any kind of a conditional statements and as well as a looping statements in Selenium IDE. This is another major limitation. And the third limitation of Selenium IDE is it can't generate any kind of a reports stating that how many test cases got executed, how many test cases got passed, how many got a failed, got a block, all those issues. It can't generate any kind of a detailed test execution report. These are all the various limitations of Selenium IDE. As IDE contains these many limitations, nowadays majority of the people are going for either RC or a WebDriver. But in our classes, what we can see means, how can we overcome the second limitation, which is implementing the conditional statements and looping statements in Selenium IDE? How we are gonna do that? How can we achieve that? We are gonna discuss in our classes. And not only that, nowadays max to max people, if at all they are aware of the Selenium IDE tool features, max to max people are using Selenium IDE in their day-to-day lives. How come? How come people are using this Selenium IDE in a day-to-day life means? The best example is, assume that you are using a Jira bug reporting tool to log your bugs. So in order to submit a bug, it needs around a 15 minutes time for us to fill the entire form and then to click on a submit button. Whereas we know that for almost all the bugs, there are certain fields which are common, like the developer name, the tester name, the sprint release, and the fixed version, the effect version, there are certain fields are there which are common for every bug. What I can do means I can record an IDE script for those actions. Before creating a bug, I will run that, and only I can enter the description and the steps to perform. Roughly, it needs around just 4 to 5 minutes for us to finish a bug. Just at max 4 to 5 minutes of time is required for us to finish a bug. So it means we are saving our time to perform our tasks in our day-to-day lives. So this is a simple way where can we use a Selenium IDE to simplify our tasks. Okay, that's fine guys. Done up to here. Am I clear for everybody with this IDE and its features, guys? Or do you people have any specific questions for me? Am I clear for you all with this IDE tool features and its limitations? Integrated development environment. The abbreviation of Selenium IDE is it's an integrated development environment. Okay, that's fine. So moving on to the next component, which is a Selenium RC and a WebDriver. See, if you observe, RC we mentioned it as a version 1.0 and a WebDriver as a 2.0, which is the latest version. How can you compare them? Okay, how can you compare these two things, RC and a WebDriver? The best example is initially we have a prepared a test plan document for a project. Okay, we have a prepared an initial version of a test plan document. By the time we will keep that version as a 1.0, and then we will share this document to our lead for reviewing this document, and he noticed that there are some kind of minor corrections needed in this document. So he added his review comments. So we modified that document with its minor corrections and we named that version as a 1.1 version. So it means by looking into the first version and second 1.1 version, we can compare that both are test plan documents only. 1.0 is the initial document. 1.1 is a document which contains minor modifications. By looking into this document, he has suggested to do major modifications in that document. Then in those cases, we will change this version to 2.0. It means both 1.0 and 2.0 are only the test plan documents for a particular project. But the difference is the content of whatever we have specified got modified between these two documents. That's the reason we changed this version to 2.0. It means both the 1.0 and 2.0 are almost one and the same, but the content whatever we have specified in the document might change. Okay, the same concept will be applicable over here. So RC is a version 1.0 and a WebDriver 2.0 means both RC and a WebDriver are one and the same, but there exists a small difference between these two. And even I can compare this one with Apple iPhone i4 mobile and an i5 mobile. See, both i4 and i5 both are Apple mobiles itself, but the difference between these two is i4 is using, assume that Android iOS 5 version, and this is using a 5.5 version. Okay, it is having certain limitations like it doesn't have a front camera, assume that this 2.0 i5 version is overcoming and it is having a front camera like that. Both are Apple iPhones and there are having certain differences between these two. The same way, RC and WebDriver both are Selenium components itself, but there exists a small difference between these two. But both RC and the WebDriver supports multiple programming languages and multiple browsers. Okay, multiple programming languages and as well as multiple browsers. Among all these programming languages, we are choosing Java as our programming language, and we are going to write our RC and WebDriver programs using a Java programming language itself. Okay, immediately a simple question will rise in our mind: why Java? Why not any other programming language? Right, usually this kind of a question will rise in our mind. Why only Java? Why not any other programming language? The simple answer is, nowadays majority of the people are using Selenium with the Java only. Okay, so whenever we are using Selenium with the Java, so that we will get a proper support from groups with the various solutions. This is the first thing. And another thing is Selenium itself was developed using Java programming language. Okay, Selenium itself was developed using Java programming language. That's the reason majority of the people are going for Java. And even few more questions will rise in our mind. If I don't know Java programming language, how can I work on this tool? Even though you don't know about a Java programming languages, in part of our training itself, we are going to cover Java programming language concepts. Okay, whatever the concepts required for us in order to work on both RC and a WebDriver in Java programming language, we are going to cover those concepts in part of our training itself. You no need to learn Java concepts separately. Within the training program itself, we are gonna cover these Java programming language. That's fine. This is about this stuff. Then where come the differences between RC and a WebDriver comes into your picture? See, let me show you a pictorial representation. So assume that this is one end of a river and this is another end of a river. So is it possible for us without having any boat, steamer, and if the person don't know how to swim? So without having any one of these mediums, okay, without having any one of these mediums, is it possible for one person to move from one end of a river to another end? So the answer is no. It's not at all possible for us to move from one end of a river to another end without having any one of these mediums. The same way, assume that we can treat the one end of a river as a Java programming language and the another end of a river we can treat it as a browser. So it's not at all possible for us to directly execute the Java programs on a browser. Hence, an intermediate layer is required, which is a Selenium server. So Selenium server is the one which acts like a mediator between the programming language and a browser. Selenium server is the one which acts like a mediator between the programming language and a browser, which helps executing the programs in a browser. What are all the Java programs we have written? In order to execute the Java programs in the browser, we are going for this Selenium server. Okay, that's fine, guys. So for RC, Selenium server is required, whereas moving on to the WebDriver, Selenium server is not required. The reason is, see here, if this person knows how to swim, then why we need to use any kind of a mediator, guys? If we know how to swim, then we no need to use any kind of a mediator. The same way, WebDriver is designed in such a way that it can directly communicate with the browser. Okay, the WebDriver itself is designed in such a way that it can directly communicate with the browser. It doesn't need any kind of a mediator to communicate with the browser. Hence, the basic differences comes with these two are WebDriver doesn't need any kind of Selenium server to communicate with the browser. That's the first point. That's the first advantage of a WebDriver. And another advantage is using a WebDriver, we can run the scripts without launching the browser also. Okay, without launching the browser. Invisible mode, we can run the test script without launching the browser. In the invisible mode itself, we can run the test script using a WebDriver, and using a WebDriver, we can perform the various kinds of UI actions like drag and drop, scroll bar, any kind of an UI action, we can handle it in a WebDriver in a most simplified way. Okay, that's the difference. As it is the latest component, nowadays majority of the people are going for this WebDriver in order to implement their projects. And the last one is a Selenium grid, which is used to perform cross browser, cross OS, and as well as a load testing, and this load testing is up to 4 to 5 users only. And in this load testing, it doesn't generate any kind of a response time too. It doesn't generate any response time too. Just a load test, a simple load test itself. If 4 to 5 users are accessing the application, how my application is responding will be calculated over here. That's fine. So this is about the WebDriver components, and these are all the various components that we have under this Selenium. Okay, Selenium IDE, Selenium RC, WebDriver, and as well as a Selenium Grid. Usually in our classes, guys, we will be starting our sessions with the Selenium IDE first. Okay, we are gonna start the sessions with our Selenium IDE first, where in which we are gonna see 4 to 5 classes on Selenium IDE, and later we are gonna start Java along with the Selenium RC for 4 to 5 hours, and then WebDriver with the Java concepts for about 20 to 23 hours on WebDriver with Java. Along with, we are gonna conduct a mock interviews at the end of the training. Okay, altogether the total duration for this training is around 30 to 35 hours, and on a daily basis I will be sharing this running notes. See here, I just marked all my points here in this running notes. On a daily basis I will be sharing these running notes from my end, so you no need to prepare any running notes from your end. Even the recorded sessions also I'm gonna share from my end. You no need to record anything from your end. I'm gonna share these recording sessions and as well as the running notes, and each and every session we are gonna discuss with the real-time scenarios only. Okay, and I will give an access for an application where in which you can practice all the scenarios whatever I am explaining in a classes on that application itself. Okay, you can practice all the scenarios whatever I am explaining on that app. Daily we are conducting, and our session is going to be happen from Monday to Friday. We are going to have sessions from Monday to Friday, 1 hour a day. Okay, and our sessions are just 5 days a week. Okay, so these are all the various things